The alleged final chapter of the Middle-earth saga, once again directed by New Zealand's own Peter Jackson, was released nationwide on December 17, 2014, and will undoubtedly pull a sizable profit, despite its mammoth $250 million budget. Picking up right where the previous installment foolishly ended, this PG-13 rated narrative follows several parallel groups of players, as they impatiently engage in a massive war for poorly explained reasons. Indeed, the first half of this picture is spent listening to talking heads argue about an impending battle. So even though this is the shortest Middle-earth movie yet at 144 minutes, it still feels painfully slow. Opening with what should have been the explosive ending to the last picture, this film is a non-stop string of proper nouns and unnecessarily lengthy exposition. I mean, hell, even the title is long-winded. Martin Freeman once again leads the huge group as the title character, walking barefoot in his bathrobe around the chaotic battlefield like it's just a walk to the fridge, even questioning an ally. Are we okay to stand here? Richard Armitage is the only other person worth mentioning, who receives the slight majority of the screen time, hyping up his dwarf companions for another pointless fight by asking them, "Will you follow me? One last time." The entire cast from nearly all previous installments also return here, which is honestly not a good thing, as few are given anything important to say or do. One scene has 3 familiar faces from the Lord of the Rings trilogy fighting some invisible soldiers or something, and a sequence that has absolutely no consequence to the rest of the story. I don't even care if it's in the original book or if it sets up the next trilogy. It felt like pointless fan service and definitely should have been removed. I mean, for crying out loud, Christopher Lee is 92 years old. There's no reason he had to get off his bedpan for this dumb scene. You know that classic action movie staple where a character is saved at the last minute from a previously unseen ally? Or when someone stares into the distance, reacting to something off-screen we haven't seen yet? Yeah, both of those things happen about 20 times in the Battle of the Five Armies, and after the first few instances, they no longer carry any dramatic tension whatsoever. Even the titular battle is a bore. It's a silly collection of chroma keyed violence, devoid of any suspense or dynamic moments that made a similar sequence in the Two Towers so memorable.
The dwarves are about to be overrun. Thorin must be warned.
By all means, warn him. I've spent enough elvish blood in defense of this accursed land. No more.
Sandrill!
I'll go.
Don't be ridiculous. You'll never make it.
Why not?
Because they will see you coming and kill you.
No, they won't. They won't see me.
It's out of the question. I won't allow it.
I'm not asking you to allow it, Gandalf.
Later, the movie very figuratively jumps to shark, with a preposterous scene that has Orlando Bloom hopping up falling stones like it's a staircase. The physics of this maneuver, even in a magical fantasy land, are so absurd, it's impossible not to laugh. This is immediately after an equally ridiculous moment when he falls onto a giant troll, piercing the back of its neck with his elvish blade. Bloom then proceeds to control the beast like he's having a piggyback ride. But if you don't take these events seriously, there's still a lot of fun to be had. And aside from a few battle shots, the visual effects work by Weta Digital is impressive as always. Howard Shore's score is excellent as well, but the most effective beats rely on reuse cues from the first trilogy. Occasionally, when the film does settle down to one-on-one fights and dialogue, it can be interesting, exciting, and moving. Watching these characters finally get a much-needed conclusion is also pretty satisfying. It's just unfortunate that after 6 films, Jackson still hasn't learned the importance of the phrase less is more, opting to cram this final installment with so much unnecessary bloat it almost begins to collapse under its own weight. And for what it's worth, I can almost guarantee this won't be the last time we see Middle-earth. An entertaining and competently made diversion, but probably the least substantive and shallow J.R.R. Tolkien adaptation yet. The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies is an enjoyable mess of empty thrills and pointless characters. And here are some of your reviews. As has been the trend with the Hobbit movies, you scored this higher than I did, calling it great. I was somewhat disappointed with this final chapter, but I still thought it was pretty cool.